saying it is revolutionary, saying it is game changer and all that might be too cliched. In the next 10 minutes, I'll just summarize what I learned in the last 15 years starting from 2005. Reaching the brain through a pinhole, opening up another opportunity to treat vascular diseases of the blood vessel. This is a video which most of the senior people would have seen or experienced in the 70s doing a cerebral angiogram by a direct carotid puncture. Can anybody guess from which movie this is taken? This is from the movie Exorcist, where a direct carotid puncture is done, and on an X-ray film, you take the shoot and record the angiogram. Angiogram was essentially done as a diagnostic tool in the 70s. Ejas Moniz was a neurologist who did the first angiogram in 1927. From 1960 to 80, it was just a diagnostic tool to assess vascular disease and even other tumors and other things because imaging was not available. 1990 to 2015, there has been significant advances as far as aneurysm treatment is concerned. But what has happened after that is the revolutionary changes in the technology with the advent of a biplane cath lab. So this is essentially a procedure by sticking a small needle into the femoral artery. Anybody in this audience will be able to do this. This is just to motivate and invite all the neurosurgeons and the neurologists to take up this subspecialty of interventional endovascular neurointerventions. Just puncture the femoral artery carefully under fluoroscopic guidance, put in a small guide wire, secure the femoral artery very carefully. This is a very, very easy procedure which any neurosurgeon or any neurologist can do with a little bit of training. Then put in a sheath into the femoral artery, and that is the only thing that is required to enter the arterial highway. And through the arterial highway in the femoral artery, you can take the this is under fluoroscopic guidance. Under fluoroscopic guidance, you can very easily see how the catheter is taken through the descending aorta. You can see the gas in the intestines. So I show this video to show you exactly, this is exactly the time it takes to puncture the groin and reach the brain. You have reached the Whitela junction, or otherwise called the aortic arch. Then you decide whether you want to go to which vessel you want to go, and you hook the vessel which you want to go, the right carotid artery you hook the right artery, that is a subclavian. Then you hook the carotid artery and take a rod map, and it is like switching on the headlight and go into whichever artery you want. There are a lot of things now. This is like switching on the, this is called rod map, where you can see the blood vessel very clearly, and very, very easily you can navigate catheters and wires into the brain and do procedures. In the next 10 minutes, I'll give you 10 examples of diseases which can be treated by endovascular route. One, a diagnostic angiography. This is the gold standard. The difference between a CT angiogram and an MR angiogram and an angio is the difference between a photo versus a video. Assessment of collateral flow, the circle of Willis, better anatomical visualization. 3D DSA gives excellent quality. One can plan procedures based on that, especially in AVMs and dual leg fistulas and aneurysms, and that is, you can assess the collateral flow in the cases of stroke. Here you can see how, when one carotid is occluded, how much the cross flow is from the opposite side, and whether you need to open the vessel can be made only by doing a DSA. Second, I'll just give you 10 examples. Ischemic stroke. Ischemic stroke treatment has been revolutionized with the advent of 5 trials in 2015. The stent retriever, which is a stent which is attached to a wire, can be taken inside the brain and exactly cross the clot. It's a very, very simple procedure. Takes hardly 15 minutes to reach the site of occlusion in the middle cerebral artery. You cross the stent retriever across, wait for 5 minutes and pull out the clot. 3. I have a YouTube channel called Stroke Academy and Stroke Rounds, where we publish all the cases. I am not going to show any cases. You can view this YouTube channel to see all the cases which we do in our department. Aneurysms. Aneurysms can be treated in different ways. One, by simple endovascular coiling, where you can obliterate the aneurysm. You can use a stent called a stent-assisted coiling. You can put a flow diverter. See this case where there's a large IC aneurysm, and after the flow diverter, you don't even see where the aneurysm is. It is a simple procedure to do, easy to do. Other intravascular aneurysmal devices have come web. This is available in the market. If you look at the US, the trend is the patient is admitted with subarachnoid hemorrhage, the patient is taken for an angiogram, attempted to coil, if not coilable, then the patient goes for clipping. 4, AV malformations and dural AV fistulas. One of the main advantages of doing an angiogram is to study the angio architecture of the AV malformation and decide which is the bleeding point. Is there an intranidal aneurysm? Is there any weak point? And based on that, treatment can be decided either as a solo procedure to obliterate the AV malformation or as a combined procedure either with surgery or with radiation. 5. The most important significant advance which everybody should know is the opportunity to treat subdural hematomas. Subdural hematomas is a very easy disease to treat as far as the neurosurgeon is concerned, but at least 30% of the subdural hematomas recur. Patients on antiplatelet medication pose a significant problem. Patients on anticoagulation pose a significant problem. There has been significant advance in the understanding of the pathophysiology of the dural changes in subdural hematoma. And middle meningeal artery is the target for obliterating the vascularity, and this is the selective angiogram of the middle meningeal artery. You can see very clearly the cotton wool appearance, which is actually the leak in the meninges, which can be very elegantly demonstrated by doing a selective angiogram of the middle meningeal artery. You obliterate that vessel with simple PVA particles. This is the middle meningeal artery after obliteration. And what you have is you have a bilateral subdural hematoma. Within 3 weeks, it decreases in size, and by 1 to 2 months, it totally disappears. So what are the situations in which middle meningeal artery embolization should be considered? 1, if it is very small, if it is not producing any mass effect and the patient on antiplatelet or anticoagulation, it can be done as the only procedure, solo procedure. When the subdural hematoma recurs after surgery, after a Burr hole evacuation, you can go in, and especially if the patient has to be started back on antiplatelet medication, you can do a middle meningeal artery embolization. We have done 20 cases in our department, combined along with the neurosurgery department, and we have found it extremely useful in the 20 cases. 6, vasospastic diseases. Like spasm after aneurysmal subarachnoid hemorrhage is a very, very problem for the neurosurgeons as well as after coiling. Because even after a successful coiling, even after a successful clipping, vasospasm can kill the patient unless it is identified properly. Going into the vessel and giving intra-arterial nimodipine literally opens the vessel in front of the eyes. Intra-arterial milrinone works wonders. Angioplasty. Stentplasty is another interesting opportunity. You take the same stent retriever which we use for doing stroke thrombectomy, put it in the spastic vessel for 5 minutes. It opens the vessel. M1 can be opened easily where there is spasm. A1, distal A1, all the vessels we can do a stentplasty, and this literally saves the patient. 7, sinovenous thrombosis and sinus stenting. Recently we had a patient who after vaccine developed an intracerebral bleed and all the sinuses were thrombosed because of what is called a vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia. An young fellow, very unfortunate, very smart fellow, after vaccination, COVID vaccination, came like this. You go into the superior sagittal sinus and either by aspiration or by stent retriever, pull out the clot, and literally the patient improves after that. Second, in patients with idiopathic intracranial hypertension, they have, if you can demonstrate there is a sinus stenosis and measure the pressure proximal and distal to that, a sinus stenting is literally curative for these patients with idiopathic intracranial hypertension. Vascular tumors, especially meningiomas with a meningeal supply, can be easily embolized to make the life of the surgery much easier, and in select situations as a solo procedure if it is not symptomatic. Trauma. Traumatic lesions of the carotid artery, vertebral artery, like penetrating injuries, stab injuries, road traffic accidents presenting with a large pseudoaneurysm of the carotid can be easily treated with a covered stent. And what is the future? The ability to reach the brain through a pinhole opens up a plethora of opportunities. There are so many unfortunate patients with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, patients who are bedridden with stroke, where we don't have anything much to offer. But the opportunity of implanting an electrode so easily in the superior sagittal sinus, this is called stent trode or stent electrode. So this stent electrode, if it is implanted in the superior sagittal sinus and connected to an external connector, through and this can be communicated to a computer to a Bluetooth device, and this is not fiction. The first, this is what Stephen Hawking said, and Synchron is a company which makes Stentrod, and the first 2 patient implantation has already been over. And this is the patient with ALS. In Australia, this patient underwent a Stentrod implantation in the superior sagittal sinus, which is a very simple procedure. Go through the femoral vein, take the catheter into the superior sagittal sinus, and accurately position the stent electrode in the superior sagittal sinus in the area where you want to. This can be used for 2 purposes. One, to stimulate the motor cortex, and second, to receive the impulses from the brain so that you have a brain-computer interface. So just see how fascinating this is going to be. This particular patient who is not able to move his hand can communicate with a computer, open his WhatsApp just by thinking about it. This patient, so this is the electrode which is connected to the chest. So just see that how this will change the future of rehabilitation. And these patients who have stroke, spasticity, these can be stimulated because of the stent electrode, and they can have stimulation of the motor cortex through the stent electrode. That is going to be the future. So the ability to reach the brain through a pinhole within few minutes is opening up the future for the treatment of neurosciences. Dear neurologists and neurosurgeons and the radiologists, let us all work together as a team, because this, I believe, is going to be a game changer as far as neurovascular diseases are concerned. Thank you for your patient listening.